Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be Chapter 12 of this reading. Back at the hotel room, I went straight to the weapon rack to place Galden into it. The dimension would repair any of the stuff that was broken, other than Zaec and Vince. It also couldn't repair Galden. Don't know why. Yet I still put it in there. Once done, I went to sit back down in my chair as I crossed my right foot over my left onto my desk. I then started channel surfing to find something interesting to watch, as unlucky as that was with human networking. Amber and Joel headed into the second bedroom to nap, but then closed the door after looking in and went into the first when I was done. Probably because Wolf and Fox were in there, seeing as they weren't out on the couch. Zaec just continued to sleep on the right side couch because, like me, he was a lazy ass person sometimes. After about 5 minutes of seeing all the crap that was on TV, which was nothing, I turned it off and tossed the remote onto my desk. However, once I did that, my mind went blank. I just stared at the empty screen through the mirror and sat completely still, without a single bit of focus on anything around me. A few seconds into my daydreaming, I heard a voice, but only in a very quiet whisper. It said, "The world shall be renewed. The legendary Endelment shall rise. His enemies shall fall. None will be spared. Their only hope lies within the rebirth of one last ancient, the one they call the Endelment." The whisper grew louder as it said, "He will not be stopped. He is the one that stands against those that are unworthy. He will end it all. There is no changing what has been set in motion." The whisper then grew even louder, where it was almost yelling as it violently said, "Murder them, Endelment. All of them." "You okay, Z?" Fox asked. Broken from my daydreaming, I jumped a bit in my seat and quickly looked over at Fox, while she walked out in her half-state and stared at me, confused. I was slightly frightened for a second, then I calmed and leaned back in my chair as I went to look up at the ceiling. While doing so, I replied, "I'm fine." "You don't look it," she said as she shut the door to the bedroom. I scratched the top of my head with both my hands for a moment as I changed my appearance, revealing two black wolf ears that had an inch of white at the tips. When my wolf ears popped up, my other ears reverted into my head. I then stood up and used my wolf tail to rip a hole out of my pants, just under the belt. I quickly flicked it to the sides to stretch, then let it hang down. I had my tail reach down to my back heel and its fur to be fluffy, because it was cute to me and I liked it, so shut up, with the fur being black with white at the last 2 inches. I changed my appearance because, well, I just can't stand humans. The way they acted, the way they smelled, even the way they looked. And to think that my race looked similar to that of theirs? Hell no. I wasn't going to let myself stand for that. Though I may have looked like an Alicans, it was better than people taking a first glance at me and thinking that I was some annoying human. It was only just then that I had enough time to change my appearance, but it was well worth it to me. Fox looked at me with a light smile as she giggled and wagged her tail, then asked, "What's the occasion, Z? You gonna go impress my wolfie?" I looked down at my claws to watch them grow out and sharpen slightly, then replied, "I hate humans." I used my right index finger to pick at my fangs a bit, then wiped my claw on my coat and said, "So much that I hate the fact that I look like them." As I twisted myself to the left to look back at my tail, Fox walked over to me and asked, "What's so special about being a wolf?" "'Cause wolves are loyal and protective creatures." I turned to sit back in my chair again and stared up at the ceiling, placing my feet on my desk with my left ankle over my right. Why not a cute little fox like me? Or a rabbit with cute, fluffy bald tail and soft ears. Like Bunny. She then twitched her ears and quickly pointed her tail up for a second, realizing something, while she took a deep breath and said, or even a cute little kitty kitty cat cat. Why do you say it like that? Say what? I turned my eyes to her and asked, why do you call the feline race that kitty cat thing? Fox giggled some more as her tail started to wag again, then said, I don't know. They're just so cute that I just have to call them that. They're cute little kitty kitty cat cats. With that, I closed my eyes to meditate as I thought, by the creator, you're annoying. Fox whined a bit as she said, oh, come on. Don't you want to be an adorable, lovable, cute little fox like me? Or a kitty kitty cat cat? I can't stand cats. I don't hate them. They're just annoying. And besides, what's so great about being a fox? I should not have asked. Fox moved to sit down on the left side of my desk as she faced me and replied, well, foxes are like a crossbreed of a wolf, which I think are just so cute, and a kitty kitty cat cat, to me, which are also just so cute. Therefore, I think that we're the cutest creatures around. And you would look so cute as a fox. You're such an idiot, I thought. Just then, she sighed and sat in silence for a few seconds, while staring at me affectionately. She then said, you know, my lord, even though you know me to only love Wolfie, I would like to get to know you a bit more. Irritated with my concentration being broken, I asked, what do you mean by that? Well, maybe we should start to see each other a little more. Maybe you could see into making me a new family servant. Stupid, so shut up. Fox quickly became angry as she barked, hey! The only reason you want me to do that is because you want to be with Wolf. What? No, you're not getting what I'm trying to say. Then if it's not true, ask if you can serve Zaec. No. I looked over at her, angry as well, and said, then apparently you just lied to me. Say what it is so that I can continue with my meditation. What the hell do you want? Amazingly, even after I barked at her, Fox went back to being calm as she continued to stare at me affectionately and said, well, I can sense that you're a lot nicer than you portray yourself to be. She then leaned over to me a bit and continued, and somehow, I feel more than just safe with you. Great, I said annoyed. Now shut up. However, she ignored what I said and continued, thing is, you're not only part of the highest ranking family in our civilization. She then turned away in a depressing state as she continued, you already have a wife that loves and cares for you. I'm going to kick you off my desk if you don't shut up. Still ignoring me, the Alkins turned back and started rubbing my left leg with her left hand and said, yet Wolfie likes you and wishes to be with you no matter what, even though she knows she can't have you. I mean, I understand that she's your family's servant and all, but there's more to it with you too. I raised my left foot for a kick, but Fox just stood up and moved closer to the upper left side of my torso. Even with my threat, she continued, she told me how you allowed her to have her freedom, even when she was ordered from your father to serve you. I ordered her to leave. And yet she stood by you and watched you grow to become a great prince. She stuck by you through everything and never questioned anything of you. Never stood against you in any way. Never backed out when things got out of control. At that point, just about the entire right side of my face began twitching, trying to keep my anger from exploding out of me. I spoke through my teeth and said, I'm going to smack you if you don't shut up and let me meditate in the next 3 seconds. Fox placed her hands behind her back, while staring at me as she calmly said, fine, I'll be quiet then, my lord. After a few seconds of silence, she leaned over me to grab my ears with her fingers. Then as she started rubbing them, she said, your ears are just as soft and smooth as Wolfie's. I quickly swung out my left fist to punch her, but stopped just an inch away from her stomach. I restrained myself from hitting Fox, knowing that if I did, I might have Wolf to explain to. I still held my fist tight, having sliced the palm of my gloves and nearly cutting my own skin with my new claws. While I slowly moved my fist away from Fox, very irritated that she just wouldn't be quiet, I said, "Shut up." Though she finally got quiet, she continued to rub my ears, which I guess wasn't all that bad. For whatever dumbass reason she felt the need to tell me all that, I decided not to care. I just went into meditating, so I could talk to Koju again about something. Instead, Shadow answered and told me that Koju was a little tied up at the moment with Kalita. I didn't even bother to ask what he meant by that, with it most likely being something weird. Since it was Shadow that answered, he just talked about completely random and non-meaningful things for about 10 minutes. After that, I yelled at him through telepathy and demanded him to tell me what was with the performance he put on with JJ, because I wasn't in complete control over my body. He told me nothing and tried to change the subject again. Yet as he continued, I just insulted him by calling him a pussycat, which finally got him to shut up, and then demanded once again for him to tell me what happened. Insulted but unable to do anything about it, Shadow told me exactly what I needed to know. I completely lost my concentration and awoke, opening my eyes wide. I placed my feet onto the floor as I leaned forward, nearly hitting my head against Fox's, and slammed my right fist onto my desk. While in the same motion, I yelled, "Son of a bitch!" My desk broke in half, and the kitchen knives that were stuck in it flung out. One bounced off the first bedroom door, and the other on the right side wall. I then continued, "How dare he make fun of me?" Fox jumped back as she swung her hands up to her neck, then said, "By the creator, Z, what's wrong?" I raised my fist and said, "He's no god. He's just some punk that needs to get the shit kicked out of him." I calmed down a bit as I looked over at Fox and said, "I need you to help me find Vincent. I need to get to the bottom of this legend right now." Just as I turned to head out the front door, Fox ran around to stand in my way as she faced me and said, "No way. I'm not going anywhere without my Wolfie. Therefore, you can just bite me, especially if you're not going to tell me exactly what it is that you're upset about." I looked down at her as I gave a smirk and said, "You know, for a servant, you're pretty damn stubborn." She leaned a bit forward to me as she grew a light smile and asked, "Really? You think I'm pretty?" With that, I quickly became irritated as I bluntly said, "Don't make me smack you." Fox stood up straight as she also became annoyed and said, "Geez, can you take a simple joke?" I would, I thought, if they were actually funny. I glanced at the kitchen as I thought again about what I had in mind about her question, which made me smile. After a few seconds of silence, I gave a quick sigh as I bent my head down and said, "Go get your Wolfie up." I then looked up at the woman and said, "I'll tell you what I'm upset about later." Fox grew a big smile as her tail wagged in great excitement. Then she ran to the bedroom to get Wolf. Amber and Jewel got up and walked out of the other bedroom, probably to find out what the noise was all about. Zaec woke up and rubbed his right eye with his right middle finger as he yawned, trying to ask, "What's going on?" Wolf, who had changed into her half-state, walked out with Fox holding onto her right arm and said, "Road trip, apparently." My brother lowered his hand as he looked at the Alikins and said, "Well, it's not really a road trip, depending on how we go." He then stood up and turned around to face me as he opened his mouth to say something, but said nothing after he noticed my ears. He just looked at me confused, but regained his focus and asked, "How we going, bro?" I thought about it, then turned to him with a smirk on my face and said, "Let's have a little fun with it." I then turned back towards the front door as I said, "See you all down in the lot." Just as I walked out the front door and turned to my right to head down the hallway to the elevators, I saw some wannabe gangsta looking white guy come from around the corner. heading in my direction. I noticed a small pair of sunglasses in his shirt pocket that looked just like Yojin's. I wanted them. When we passed one another, I quickly and stealthily reached up to grab the glasses with my right hand, flicked them open, and placed them on just like Yojin does. Because he and I are cool like that. Nah, I'm playing. Anyways. Once I turned the corner to the elevators, the man that I passed stopped and turned to me as he yelled, "Hey you!" Guess I wasn't that stealth. I walked into the elevator that the man got off and turned to face the door as it closed, waving goodbye as he tried to stop the doors from shutting. However, he was too late. I just laughed at that as I waited to reach the lobby floor. On the lobby floor, I walked out alone from the elevator and looked over at the front desk to the attendants as they looked over at me. I jerked my head up slightly as to say what's up, then turned back as I headed out the front door. However, the attendants didn't say or do anything, just stood there, confused and with their mouths open. I headed straight to the parking garage across the street without looking to see if any cars were nearby. From what I've learned in America, I don't have to wait for traffic or walk through a crosswalk. I just need to walk. As I walked into the street, cars coming in both directions stopped and honked their horns a couple times. Then they continued on their way as I walked on. I motioned all the way down to basement floor 3 of the parking garage, where I had my car parked next to the elevators. As I motioned around to the driver's side, everyone else came off the nearest elevator, with Zaec walking away to head for his motorcycle. When Wolf, Fox, Amber, and Jewel got into my car, I turned to my left and said, "You best keep up on that crotch rocket, bro." "Shit," he said as he jumped up on his sparkle black street bike. "You think that hunk of junk can beat me?" He started his bike up and revved its engine a couple times, then said, "You must be out your mind." With that, he put on a black full head helmet and took off. I laughed for a bit as I moved to sit in my car and closed the door, then started it up and the engine echoed throughout the garage. While I pulled out of the garage, safely as it may be, Amber asked, "What's up with you?" "What? You're not peeling out like your brother. What's up with that?" "Don't worry," Wolf said. "He plays it safe when he's feeling a bit down." "That's weird." Driving up to the ground floor, I first had Fox tell me exactly where Vincent was. I then told everyone what I had learned from Shadow that angered me. Apparently, as long as I used the powers of darkness, Shadow was in control until the fight was over. Not only that, but every time I used darkness, it would transform my body ever so slightly into the King of Darkness himself. It may just engulf me altogether, and I can only use it once a day. In addition to that, he told me that Father had found out that our planet, Bodor, had died, and he didn't warn anyone of this tragedy. But Father was in search for another planet to rule. One that was very similar. Yeah, Earth. Out of all the planets in the galaxy that he could take over, Father chose the already inhabited Earth in all the known region. Who would have guessed? Yeah, I've seen some of those dumbass outer space movies that Earth has. All of them involve Earth. Maybe Hollywood is actually trying to prove a point. That Earth doesn't deserve to exist or something. Whatever. In a way, I didn't care if Father took over or not. Nothing I had seen from the humans had impressed me to allow them even to live. Shadow also told me that Father found a way to get hold of the powers of darkness as well. When he told me that, all I could think was that Father had best hope it can help him once we meet. Because if not, I will destroy him for his incompetence. I drove around to the entrance/exit of the parking garage, where I saw my brother waiting at the crosswalk, revving his engine. While I pulled up next to his left side, I put my car into neutral and gave my engine one big rev, which roared out into the streets of Manhattan, turning several heads. When I stopped, I glanced over at Zaec with a smirk. Then I looked over to my left and saw a sheriff and 2 PD patrol vehicles at the streetlight. One of them faced away from us, and the other 2 were getting ready to come down the street near us. I looked back over at my twin brother, my window rolled down, and said, "When their light turns green, head west towards St. Louis, Missouri." He gave a shrug, while he raised his hands up slightly, as if he had no idea of what I was talking about. Figures. I shook my head, then said, "Just head west onto the freeway and then follow me, okay?" He gave me a thumbs up with his left as he revved his bike a couple more times. I shook my head again as I looked back over at the patrol cars and said to myself, "Fucking idiot." When I looked back over at them, all 3 turned their chase lights on, one after the other, after hearing the loud engine of Zaec's bike. We sat there for about 3 seconds before the light turned green for the police, though they really didn't need to wait for it to go. Then Zaec and I peeled off and headed out towards the Lincoln Tunnel. As we peeled out, the 3 patrol cars quickly moved to chase us. Traffic was a bit heavy, like always in a city, and made it hard to weave through it, but it wasn't anything that Zaec and I couldn't handle. Trust me, heavy traffic on Earth is nothing compared to a normal day at the racetrack on Cormorex. Once we got into the tunnel, one of the PD vehicles came up near my left and spoke to me through the megaphone for me to pull over. In response to that, I quickly slammed on my brakes just enough to get behind the patrolman. With that, I moved to smash into the right side of their back bumper, causing the patrol car to spin out around the front of my car and slide into the front of the second patrol car. Both struck each other and stopped, drivers basically unharmed, while the sheriff continued to chase us. I looked over at my right mirror to see Zaec pull off a small stoppie in front of the sheriff, then he did a quick bunny hop onto the sheriff's car before he could be hit. When he jumped onto the car, the sheriff stuck his head out the window and looked over at my brother while angrily yelling at him about what he was doing and that it was against the law. Idiot. Zaec just looked over at the sheriff and flipped him off with both hands. While watching this, I angled my car in front of the sheriff's. After I saw Zaec insult him, I slammed on my brakes and caused the sheriff to hit me. The impact of the sheriff's car and mine crushed the front part of his frame and engine, but left my car unscathed, as my car is metal, of course, made completely out of boulder instead of that steel and fiberglass crap humans use. The moment I hit the sheriff, who also wasn't severely injured, Zaec did a front flip with his bike off the car and over me to land back on his wheels in front, then took off. I quickly took off after him to run him down. Only for fun, of course. We sped through traffic heading out of the tunnel. As we got out, Amber turned to me and yelled, "For the love of God, man, can't you drive like a sane person?" "What's sane?" I sarcastically asked. "For someone who's from another world," Jules said, "you're pretty familiar with where you're going, Ray." "You finally noticed, huh?" I drove up to my brother and followed him with just 3 inches between his back tire and my front bumper. Zaec, without looking back at me in any way, knew I was there and raised his left hand to have it behind his head, where he flipped me off as he continued to drive. "Yeah," Jewel replied. She glanced out the windows, watching the other drivers swerving to keep away from Zaec and I as we drove by, while she continued, "It's a bit weird, though." I pressed down the accelerator a little bit more to bump Zaec slightly, trying to make him lose control. He was too good. He may have wobbled a bit, but came nowhere close to losing control. I then swung around to his right side and passed him up, rolling down Wolf's window and flipping him off with my left finger as I kept my eyes towards the road. With that, Amber added, "Except for the fact that you're supposed to obey the rules that the law has in play." I then laughed as I moved in front of my brother and lowered my left hand, while she asked, "How long have you guys been here?" "I'll tell you later." Right now, I want to have some fun. When I said that, Wolf looked over at me with a light smile and asked, "So what the hell have you been doing all this time?" Just then, a patrol helicopter flew over us and started to follow, while 2 highway patrol vehicles came up from behind us as we swung around onto the marginal highway. Amber glanced back to see the patrol cars, then she turned back to me and sarcastically said, "Fun's over." I laughed at that, said, "Damn, you really are stupid. Don't forget, you live in my world now, so to speak. Which means there's nothing that these humans can do to stop me. Hell, with this car, they can't scratch my paint job or even catch up to me. What makes you think you can outrun the police? Guess I haven't told you about my modifications yet, have I?" Amber looked at me confused as I tapped my left index finger on the shifter and my right thumb on the steering wheel, pointing to the number of gears and how high my speedometer went. She looked down at the shifter to notice that it had 3 extra gears printed on it. Then she looked up at the gauges and saw that the speedometer went up in increments of 50 all the way to 600 mph. Afterwards, she whispered, "Whoa, insane." "I've been trying to get it to break the speed of sound," I said, "but every time I do, the second engine overheats incredibly and the gears weld up." A moment later, the traffic started to disappear, and I saw in my mirrors that some of the patrol cars were slowing down, possibly because there was a roadblock set up ahead. As I noticed that, Amber became surprised and asked, "There's a second engine in this car?" "Yeah. It's set up in the trunk and only works when I use 7th, 8th, or 9th gear. Or when I drive backwards." I then noticed a patrol car parked at one of the on-ramps to the freeway, with the car facing outwards just at the first exit from where I was, about 1.5 miles up. Amber moved back to sit in her seat as she yelled, "What about driving backwards?" "You'll see," I calmly said, while grabbing the e-brake with my left hand. I then said, "Now watch." When we got closer to the patrol car, I looked over to my left to see Zaec drive around and wave at us with his left hand. Then he pulled his bike back to bunny hop over the divider into opposite traffic, yet stayed in the breakdown lane behind the yellow line. Wolf glanced at my brother, then turned to see a policeman throw something out onto the street as he hid behind his patrol car. She smiled and calmly said, "Spike strip." Just 1/4 mile away, I said, "Too soon, fool." I swung my car to the right as I pulled the e-brake up to slide sideways towards the strip. Just before I could hit it, I put the e-brake down and slammed on the normal brakes while I quickly flipped up the rightmost switch out of the 5 on the center console. The switch caused the hydraulics in the right side shocks to pop up and bounce my car, powerful enough to force the entire car to flip over the spike strip at over 40 mph. Once my car landed back on its tires, I flipped the switch back down and turned the car to aim at the officer that was behind his car, while my car came to a screeching halt about 10 feet away from him. The officer, a little confused yet in his adrenaline hype, quickly pulled out his gun and aimed it at me as he yelled for me to get out of the car. I just ignored his demands and started inching towards him every time he stepped closer to me, scaring the officer 2 steps back. After the 3rd time, the officer finally got angry and shot 4 rounds at me, but the windshield was bulletproof, so nothing happened. All of my windows were bulletproof, though it wasn't something normal Wavryn racers had to do for protection. I did it because I knew, at some point in my driving on Earth, that a human would get stupid again and try to shoot me. When I was shot at, I responded to the officer by rolling down my window, putting my right hand out, and waving my index finger from side to side. I sped up to the officer to scare him one last time, making him run back and jump over his car to hide behind it, knowing that he couldn't stop me himself. I looked into my left mirror to see Zaec jump back over the divider about 1/4 mile away from where I was. He then stopped in the center lane, facing to the outward right of the freeway, revving his engine as to signal me to keep moving. I turned out my front window, and the officer that I scared behind his car peeked up to aim his pistol over the hood of his car. He tried one last time to stop me and fired at my tires, which was completely useless yet again. Because again, unlike normal racers from Wavryn, my tires were completely rubber. They may be heavy, but they last longer than normal air-filled tires. After a few rounds, I slammed my shifter into reverse and took off towards my brother. Amber glanced around to see where we were heading, then turned to me and yelled, "What the hell is wrong with you, you crazy bastard?" I laughed at that, which just got her to shake her head and turned to look out her window, irritated, as she said, "Never mind." She then very quietly said, "Asshole." Zaec started off as I passed him, then drove up to my right side and looked over at me with his right eyebrow raised, yet I knew he was smiling at me as well. While we continued down the freeway, he raised his helmet slightly as I looked over at him, and he yelled, "Having fun, brother." With that, he lowered his helmet back down. "Not quite," I replied. I looked over at the helicopter that was following us, only to see that there was another one. I used my left hand to control the steering wheel as I grabbed Zane and aimed at the first chopper that flew by. It was carrying 2 snipers, who were most likely aiming to shoot out our tires. Just as I aimed up at them, someone in the first chopper called out on the megaphone, "Pull your vehicles over now." However, before we could do anything, one of the snipers shot at Zaec's rear tire, and the other simultaneously shot at my rear right tire. Of course, nothing happened. Full rubber tires. I fired back and shot away both of the snipers' guns, causing them to sit back as to try and not get hit. The pilot then retreated from the scene, knowing that I could snipe them with just my pistol, and felt not to get shot again. Ah, more irony. When the sniper chopper took off, I yelled to Zaec, "Now I'm having fun." I aimed up at the second helicopter, which looked to be a news crew chopper, and shot 3 rounds under it, purposely missing just to scare them away. After the third shot, the chopper started pulling back and headed off towards Manhattan, probably thinking that if it followed me any further, it would eventually get shot down. I put Zane back in its holster and swung my car from the left to turn it around, quickly shifting into second gear. Zaec and I headed back down the freeway towards Missouri, acting as if nothing had ever happened. After a minute, I looked over at my brother to signal him to slow down and stop messing around. In doing so, he moved to get behind me as we obeyed the speed limit. I looked back out my front window as I slowed down and said, "Now that was fun." I then glanced back and asked, "Wasn't it, Amber?" The half-blood shook her head and continued to watch out her side window as she said, "Psycho." I laughed again, while she looked over at me and said, "You know, you're a real asshole, Zaec." After about 10 minutes of complete silence, Amber put her anger aside and asked me, "How does the second engine work?" "Easy," I replied as I adjusted my new glasses with my left hand, the exact same way Yojin did. "First off, when I'm just moving forward, it's a manual that only works with the 7th, 8th, and 9th gears. Those gears allow it to reach speeds up to 600, like I showed you. It also provides extra torque and horsepower for when I take off the line in first. Second thing is, when I use reverse, it acts like an automatic and can only reach speeds of up to 150. Amber turned to look out her window again as she continued to mope over how I was acting. I didn't know what her problem was, and I was just having fun. But she needed to quit acting like a child. It was pissing me off. We drove for about 5 minutes in silence, until Jewel tapped my right shoulder. She then leaned forward to whisper into my left ear and said, "Ray, I'm sorry to ask of you this, but can you please say you're sorry to Sis?" "Why?" I whispered. "She's the one that's being an ass." She quickly grew angry at me and violently whispered, "That's bullshit and you know it." "Why me?" In response to that, Jewel grabbed my left ear and pulled it back as far as she could, nearly pulling my head into the back seats. She then whispered, "Because you're the one who got us mixed up in all of this. So either you do it, or else not only will I rip your ear off, I'll get Wolf and Fox to help me rip your dick off. Got that?" I quickly said, "Okay, fine, whatever, just go with my ear, shit." She pushed my head forward and got me to slam it against the steering wheel. I then scratched my left ear a bit with my left hand as I held the steering wheel with my right and said, "Fuck, that hurt." I lowered my hand back onto the shifter as I said, "Amber, I'm sorry. For whatever reason that I needed to say that, I'm sorry. Okay?" The half-blood looked over to her right at me, still a little angry, and asked, "How hard was that?" "Very." "Good. Now to make your sorry more affectionate, and to allow me to believe in it, you'll have to tell me how long you've been here on Earth and what you did with your spare time." Having heard that, I whispered, "Creator, damn it." I then said with a slight sigh, "Fine. It's about a 15-hour drive there anyways, if nothing gets in the way." I glanced into my rearview mirror, noticing that a car almost hit Zaec as it tried to change lanes. However, my brother looked over and honked as he swung closer to them to his right. When the driver finally saw him, my brother moved back into the center of his lane, shaking his head before continuing to focus on his driving. I explained that Zaec and I had been on Earth for over a year, easily getting the info we needed to get by. Our younger brother had only been there for about 3 months, while our elder brother arrived around the time that we saw him at the library. The only reason why Wolf and I were concerned was because Eyeless doesn't bother with details, so we figured he didn't mask his energy upon arrival. I wasn't sure of when Yojin got to Earth though, but I just figured that he and Vincent had recently arrived too. For the first year that I had been on Earth, I was gathering information about it, figuring out who or what inhabited it and what they do in a general lifespan. Which, to my mind, wasn't much. I found that those that live on Earth have a small lifespan and weren't all that different or impressive than those within Wavryn, especially Bodor. However, Zaec and Salus just kept up with the now updates, what's cool and what wasn't. Nothing that was memorable or historical. Bunch of idiots. I also told Amber my real reason for coming to Earth and what I was planning on doing with my time. This concludes the reading of Chapter 12. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. With that being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 13.